brain health sessions. We are doing a second one in July, so be looking out for your newsletter to come to the second one if you're interested. And this is casual, so if you have a question, stop me, ask a question, okay? I want you to ask questions. If you need to go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom. If you'd like some more coffee or donuts, make yourself at home, okay? Right. Any questions before we get going? Yes. Yes. They're making more copies for me, okay? Thanks. All right, we'll get started. All right. Have you ever walked into a room and wondered, what did I come in here for? Raise your hand. Have you ever misplaced your keys? Have you ever had trouble recalling somebody's name? Have you ever walked out of somewhere and thought, where in the world did I park my car? Good news, you are all normal. All right? You are all normal. All right. Can everybody hear me okay? That's the second thing. I'm pretty loud. If I drop my voice, raise your hand and tell me to speak up, okay? I want you to be able to hear. All right, today we're going to look how researchers look at memory, how memory changes as we get older, some common concerns people have about memory, and then talk about kind of techniques, tips to get us through everyday life. Does that sound good? All right. So we're going to start with how memory processes and how memories are formed. So memory is pretty complicated. What we know about brains today, we have learned the most in the last 15 years. So when we think of research, that's pretty new, right? But researchers today are learning so much more about the brain, just every day, leaps and bounds, we're learning more and more. Not all experts do agree on how memories are formed, but there are two types that researchers are looking at: the memory processes and how the memories are formed. Thank you so much. Who needed a copy? Over here. If anybody comes in, if you could direct them to that table for a handout, that would be appreciated. You're welcome. Right there? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about sensory memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory. Oops. All right, the first one is sensory memory. When I say sensory, what do you think about? The senses, right? Smell. Touch. Taste. How good that donut taste? Hearing and sight, right? Good. This is the type of memory that begins as we recognize what our senses are taking in. So every day, you're taking in new memories. Most of the times, though, we aren't even paying attention. If you catch a beautiful sunrise or sunset, you might stop and think, wow, that's beautiful. But a lot of times we just go through our day not paying attention to what our senses are taking in. I'm not really paying attention to the feel of this paper because I feel paper every day, right? But if you taste a really good meal, don't you stop and think, oh, that's delicious, right? Or you have a memory of a good meal. If I said the smell of sheets hanging out on the line, what kind of memories does that bring back for people? Childhood, right? I do not have a clothesline pole, so when I go back to my parents' house and in the summer, I sleep in my old bed, smell those sheets, it brings me back to my childhood, okay? So that's sensory memory. Things that trigger your memory through your senses, all right? The next one is short-term memory. This is kind of your working memory, all right? Oftentimes, this is just what we're doing in the moment, and then your brain decides, is this important to keep and to put into my long-term memory, or do I just need it for a moment? I think before cell phones, when you had to remember a phone number you were going to call, you kept saying those 7 digits in your head over and over again, just long enough so you could get to the phone and make that phone call. But now we have mobile phones, and we can look right here and type the numbers. I don't remember phone numbers like I used to. I don't have to. They're stored in my phone. But that's our working memory, just trying to memorize something just for a little bit, just for a moment. All right? Now, if we decide that it's important, we encode it and we stick it into our long-term memory. So our long-term memory is more permanent. It's things from the past. So if I asked you, who was your first teacher? Ooh, you might have to think a little bit about that. But if I asked you your favorite teacher, is it easier to remember your favorite teacher?
Yes.
Yes. Or the one you didn't like? Yes. Now, why do you think it's easier to remember your favorite or your least favorite versus just a random teacher?
It made a bigger impression.
It made a bigger impression. That's right. So oftentimes, the things that we recall better are things that have actually influenced us more. So a really good teacher that inspired you, or one that really helped you, or one you frankly just didn't care for. Those are going to stick out more than the everyday ones. All right? The same goes for anything. People you meet, life experiences. We all have maybe a vacation that really stands out as a great one, and then some that kind of get lost in the shuffle of our memories. But it's the really good things or the really bad things that often is what, sticks out a little bit more. Oftentimes, we stick it in our long-term memory because of its significance, kind of like I just mentioned, or its importance to us, or if we really enjoy it. Who here really enjoys sports? Any sports fans? You might know more facts about sports than somebody who doesn't care for sports. Just like somebody who enjoys music might be able to name different musicians and the names of songs better than somebody who doesn't appreciate that as much. So what we like gets stored in our long-term memory because we enjoy it. It excites us. All right. Our storage space is limitless, even though it doesn't feel like that all the time, right? It is limitless. We cannot fill up our brains. We cannot. We can always learn something new. As we get older, though, it does get a little bit harder, and it takes a little bit more effort. But we can always learn a new hobby, a new game, learn how to play an instrument. That is not my talent in life, but we can. All right. Over time, some memories do fade. All right. For example, it's easy to think of the name of our current vice president. Who's our current vice president? Biden. All right. But how easy would it be to recall all the vice presidents that have served during your lifetime? That's much more difficult, right? Because they're not president. The presidents are easier, but the vice president is a little less important. So we don't see their name as much. We don't pay attention to them as much. So it is harder. Those memories fade. Here's some other kinds of memory. Procedural memory. When you think of procedural memory, I want you to think of movement. How many of you had a car for a long time? You could get in the car, stick the key right where it goes, go on your merry way. You get a new car. And what happens when you go to put the key where it used to always go in your old car? How often is it not in the same spot? Right? That's procedural memory. It's something you do over and over again that you don't think about. That's why when your car might have the shifter on the steering column and now your new car has it in the middle, you still go up here to find the shifter, but it's here now. That's procedural memory. It's your body knows it. I use this example for women more commonly because oftentimes we use conditioner and men might not. I can't tell you how many times I've washed my hair and I think, was that the shampoo or the conditioner? Why is that? I'm not thinking. I'm on autopilot. My body is just doing it. I am not thinking in that moment. But my body knows how to do it. How many times do I have to go back and do it again because I'm like, oh, shampoo or conditioner? I don't know. So it happens. How many times have you driven somewhere that's very common to you and you get there and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't remember passing so-and-so's house or the store or the church? You're on autopilot. Okay? That's procedural memory. If I asked you how many steps does it take to brush your teeth? How many think? Just throw out how many? 2, 5. Anybody else? Feel like an auctioneer. Give me numbers. All right. Surprisingly, you have to walk in the room and turn on the light. You have to walk to your sink, take off the cap of the toothpaste. You either may put the water on first and then the toothpaste, or you might toothpaste and then water, preference. Then you have to start brushing your teeth, right? How do I get back there? Spit, rinse, turn everything off, put caps back on, put them away. There's a ton of steps. We don't think about all those steps because we automatically do it. Tonight, however, I challenge you all to brush your teeth with your opposite hand. So if you are right-handed, I would like you to do it with your left-handed, and you will learn how many steps there are in brushing your teeth. Because you will have to think about every one of them. How do I get my teeth back here? We do it, and we don't think about it. Okay? But it's good for your brain to challenge yourselves. So if you're here with somebody, remind your partner to try it the other way. All right. Then we have declarative memory, and it's broken down into 2 parts. Declarative memory is things brought forth in words or visualizations. So what you hear, what you see. All right? It includes episodic and semantic. When you look at the word episodic, what word do we see here? Episode. So these are things that you live through. All right? It's recalling facts from things that you've experienced, that teacher you like, a favorite birthday, a great memory, things that you've lived through, episodes, all right? Semantic is facts. It's recalling facts, learning facts. So if I asked you, who was the first president of the United States? George Washington. But you weren't living when he was president. So you did not live through that. It's just a fact that you know. Does that make sense? Okay. So, we kind of talked about brushing your teeth. Some other thoughts about procedural memory. Making a sandwich. You probably don't think about all the steps it takes to make a sandwich. You just kind of do that on autopilot. Tying a shoe. Now, when you teach kids how to tie a shoe, you are teaching them specific steps, right? But once we know how to tie a shoe, it's automatic. We don't think about it. Okay. I'm going to challenge you all to tap back into some of that long-term memory here. Just think for a moment in your head, what did your childhood bedroom look like? Your childhood bedroom. Can you picture the color, where the bed was placed? Did you have a side table? Was there a closet, or did you have chest of drawers sitting in that room? All right. Who here can name their 5th grade teacher? Let's throw out a name.
Miss Brown.
Miss Brown.
Brain.
How many of us can't think of our 1st grade or 5th grade teacher? They might not have been as important, all right? And that's okay. So again, oftentimes it's the ones that stand out, we remember more. What color was your first car? I drove my parents' brown station wagon. That's what I remember. Who was the first person you kissed? You can answer that to yourself. What did you wear to a special occasion? Maybe a first date or a high school dance or a special event. Okay? These are things that you lived through. Our episodic memory. All right, now we're going to go into our filing cabinet. When we call the brain a filing cabinet, well, I'm going to do that in a minute. Who can name a Tom Hanks movie?
Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump? Big, my favorite. Sleepless in Seattle?
Captain Phillips.
Captain Phillips, the new one. I hear it's great. I haven't seen it yet. All right, good. What was that? Castaway. Yes, with Wilson, his volleyball. Sleepless in Seattle. So there's lots of them. Now, if you're not a comedy fan or a Tom Hanks fan, you might not be able to answer these questions. And the thing about memory is people do have natural talents towards certain areas. Okay? So 1, it might be something that you really enjoy, and 2, it might be something that you're better at. I am a terrible speller. My mom is sure I missed phonics when I was a child. But I'm really good at geography. I'm good at directions. I'm good at reading maps. My boyfriend is terrible. And he'll pull out and he'll be like, am I going the right way? So people do have a natural ability towards certain things, all right? But there are things that we just enjoy that we know better as well. But he's awesome in math. Like, he can bust out math quicker than I can. I can do it. It just takes me a little bit longer. So, all right. Let's name the last 5 presidents, starting with Obama. Obama, Bush, Clinton, then the other Bush, Reagan. Good job. I will not ask vice presidents. All right. Can we name the continents? There are 7. Europe, Asia, North America, South America, I heard Australia, Africa, Antarctica. Nice job. Again, if you're not strong in geography or you're not interested in it, no worries if you don't remember them. All right. Name the state where Augusta is the capital. Maine. We chose that purposely. It's Maine. All right. Let's think about the middle of the United States. Can we name the 4 states that border Kansas? Missouri, Colorado, Oklahoma, and Nebraska. We have some people who know the middle of the state. All right, good job. So I talked about this a little bit as we've talked already. How do we form these memories? Well, the first is just simply paying attention. All right? How many times have we met somebody new? Hi, my name is Chelsey. And you're already thinking about what you're going to say. And then 10 minutes into the conversation, you're like, what was that person's name? Right? It's common. It's because we're not thinking about listening in the moment. We're thinking about what we're going to say. I encourage you, when you're in those situations, stop, be in the moment. Hear their name, hear what they're going to say, and then decide what you're going to reply with. So often in life, we're just not paying attention. All right? Somebody might say, hey, help me remember blah, blah, blah. And then later on they come back to you and they're like, what was that I was going to remember? And you're like, ooh, you might not have been paying attention. You might have truly forgotten, but you probably weren't paying attention in that moment. So the first step to helping us remember things is to really pay attention. Be in that moment. The next one is selectivity. I talked about this a little bit. The more significant it is to you, the more likely you're going to remember it because you enjoy it or you want to know it. The next one is called adaptive remembering. Unconsciously, one forgets the things it hurts to remember, and we remember the things it would hurt to forget. I'm going to read that one more time. Unconsciously, one forgets the things it hurts to remember, and remembers the things it would hurt to forget. So, thinking about an example my coworker uses, I can't use it, I don't have any children, but she says if women could imagine how much pain it is to have a baby, if that was ever so present in their mind, they probably would never have a second child. All right? But once you have that little bundle of joy, you're so happy, you let the pain go away. You don't think about the pain. You're focused on the joy and the baby and the child as they grow up. Okay? For people who have a really terrible incident happen in their life, sometimes their brain will block that out because it's too traumatic to have at the forefront of their memory. They will shove it down there in that brain and hide it. So it's not always affecting them. So our brains can try to be protective for us. And sometimes we will kind of remember a little bit differently. And that's what we call misremembering. Our memory is not perfect. Phew, that lets you all off the hook, right? Memory is not perfect, all right? Cut yourself some slack. So oftentimes, if we can't remember the whole story, we fill it in. Our brain wants to fill it in to make it make sense. So you might remember part of what happened, but you might not remember part of the story. So your brain is going to make something up that makes sense to it. I think of families, and a good example of this is my mom is the oldest of 7 daughters, all right? She is, let me think about this. See, my mom is 65, my youngest aunt is 42, so what is that, 23 years? 23 years difference between the oldest and the youngest. All right, we went to visit my second youngest aunt, who was 18, 19 years younger than my mom. And when we left her house, my mom was like, I don't know what Kay was talking about. That is not how that happened. Now think about that. If my Aunt Kay was 6 and my mom was in her 20s, you're coming at it from a very different perspective in life, right? And what does a 6-year-old remember versus a 20-something-year-old remember? All right? So it's not that my aunt was lying about the story. She was telling the story from her memory as a child. My mom was remembering it as a young adult. Okay? So do you see how sometimes even life, where you are in life, can affect how you remember something? The same goes for, they say, when they do studies on things like car accidents, if somebody has never been in a car accident, they might view a car accident very differently. If you have been in a car accident and you got hit, you might have a different version than somebody who actually accidentally hit somebody. Do you see how there's two different perspectives there? So our memories are kind of shaped by where we are in life, our experiences in life, and just kind of what happens. Oftentimes they will show pictures of something to people. They'll show them a picture of a person, like a video clip, and then they'll show them like pictures of people, and they have to pick out which person was in that video clip. And they just pick the one they think it was, but they probably weren't paying attention close enough, they can always identify the right person. That's why a lot of times when something happens, it's hard for people to identify things. So our memory is not perfect, all right? It can be slanted or shaded by our experience, our age, things that we've gone through in life. Here's a quote from Mark Twain. It is not so astonishing the number of things I can remember as the number of things I remember that aren't so. A man with words, right? So we still do have a lot to learn about memory, but when you think about your memory, I want you to think about it like a filing cabinet, okay? So when you're trying to learn something, you start with acquiring the information, all right? So you're taking the information in, just like you'd be writing it down on a piece of paper, all right? So as you're sitting here taking in this information, your brain is like, okay, I'm remembering, okay? And then your brain goes to the retaining phase. Well, do I feel like this is important enough to remember? If yes, you're going to stick it in the filing cabinet. If it's something that you just need to know for a little bit, like there's a sale going on at the local store, that's kind of temporary, right? That's this week, the sale's on this week. After this week, do you care if you remember if the eggs were on sale? You don't. You don't really stick that in the filing cabinet. Does that make sense? All right, well then, when you're trying to remember something, your brain has to go through all those files to retrieve that memory. So now think about the memory, the filing cabinet of a 10-year-old. How much is in the filing cabinet of a 10-year-old versus how much is in the filing cabinet of all you? Whose filing cabinet is much more full? Right? So, when you're trying to remember something that you haven't thought about in a long time, give yourself time to flip through that filing cabinet. You are not going to pull that information out as quickly as you did when you were younger. Because frankly, your filing cabinet is a lot more full. Does that make sense? Give yourself a moment. The worst thing that you can do is get anxious, because how well or how clearly do we think when we're anxious? We don't. We don't. It makes it worse. All right? You might as well just tip your filing cabinet over. Now it's all a mess. Okay? So take a moment. It's okay. Your filing cabinet is much more full. It takes a little bit longer to retrieve the information. So we started off this session, and I mentioned some things that we have a hard time remembering. What else do people have what other kind of things do people have that they have a hard time remembering?
Like if you have like a combinations of codes to get in.
Oh my goodness, codes, passwords. How many passwords do we have today? They keep telling us not to use the same one, but goodness gracious. Only holds so much information. Not really, but make it easy. Yes, what else? PIN numbers, yes.
Names.
Names, yes. Names is common answer. We'll talk about that. Dates. Things that you used to think, no, eat, no problem. I know everybody's birthday. I know their anniversaries. I have this. Ooh, families grow. People get married. We have new babies, new family members. The families get bigger and bigger. Cut yourself a break. Don't stress over those things. Find a system to keep track of those. Right? All right. So now we're going to talk a little bit. Oh, wait, before we go there. Let me back up. All right, so normal aging changes in memory versus severe memory loss. Okay? Memory loss is not inevitable. Okay? We are not all going to have Alzheimer's and dementia. Okay? Some people do. As we get older, our risks do increase. All right? Oftentimes, people get very concerned because they can't think of the person's name, or they can't remember something they were trying to remember. All right? The things that we talked about, where did our keys go, what's that person's name, where's the car, that's normal. All right? Research finds that younger adults forget just as much as older adults. All right? But guess what? Younger kids do not care if they forgot something, because they're not fearful of something like dementia. As we get older, we have a little bit more sensitivity to that, don't we? So we start focusing on it a little bit more. Oh gosh, I forgot something. Do I need to be concerned? All right? Oftentimes, young kids will blame others. They'll blame their parents. They'll blame their friends. It wasn't me. Okay? As we get older, we think, ooh, is it me? Okay? If older people, if I said there's going to be a pop quiz today, how would you immediately feel? It's time to go. Terrified, right? If you ask a high schooler, there's a pop quiz, yes, they're going to have some anxiety, but they take quizzes regularly. That is part of their life. It is not part of our life, all right? So when you have to go in and take a driving test, everybody's going to be at a higher anxiety level, because we haven't had to do it in years, all right? So understand that in these high anxiety situations that we do have to go through sometimes, if we prepare ourselves and try to, stop, take a deep breath, give yourself a minute, take your time, you are going to do better than if you are anxious and fearful while you're taking those tests. Does that make sense? Okay, good. All right. As people get older, they will experience some changes in memory, but it is gradual. There's a lot of variability among people in terms of memory, as well as natural abilities. I am not good with names. My entire life, I've not been good with names. Guess what? It's just going to get worse, right? But I can't use that as a judgment for me, really for anybody, because names are the first things that are hard for people. But if math has always been a struggle, then you can't use math, your ability to do math, as a good judgment on your memory. Does that make sense? Okay. So when we talk about the ability to recall, guess what age your ability starts to decrease?
45.
45? 30s? Well, everybody in this room is past the point, I can tell you that. All right? Including me. Age 30 is when your recall, the quickness and accuracy starts to slow down. 30! Goodness gracious, right? So, names are even hard for me. I'm 36, all right? Names are even hard for me. So, just give yourself a moment when you're like, I know her, I see you at the store, and I know your name, and I can't think about it. You know what? We are all getting there. So just say, you know what? I cannot remember your name. Or don't even worry about it. Just have the conversation because you know them and they know you. You don't have to admit it. And later on, when you are not worried about it, what happens? Light bulb. Mary Jones. Right? Because you're no longer worried about it. But in the moment, you're trying to go through your filing cabinet like, what's her name? I know her from church. Her son and my son played softball together. You're going through all the things you know about the person. You just can't think of their name. And that is common. That is normal. Absolutely normal. Okay? Some other things that can affect how well we remember things. All right? When we say human considerations, what kind of things do you think we're thinking about? how well you feel. Did you get a good night's sleep? All right? What's going on in the environment? Are you on a medication that's causing you to be a little foggy? All right, think about those things. Like, what else could be affecting your memory? Are you grieving? Right? What kind of emotions can get in the way of how well you think? We talked about anxiety. Grieving is another big one.
Stress of all the
Stress.
kinds.
Yes, stress of all different kinds. What else? Are you sick? Are you well?
Do you feel like your plate's over full sometimes?
Yes. So you're overwhelmed. There's a lot going on. I'm sure you can all shake your heads when you think about these things, how well we think about something. Are we in a rush? That can affect it. Alright? So, life is not perfectly packaged. We're not always going to be calm and not have things to worry about and feel well. So give yourself a break if you're not feeling up to your normal self. A lot of people who've lost a loved one, they will say, oh, that whole month was a blur. I don't even remember it. Because they are grieving. The emotions are so strong, they are not taking in things clearly. Okay? So yes, that whole month could be a blur. If somebody has surgery, all right? If you have to have any kind of anesthesia, as we get older, the effects of those things last a lot longer. A lot of times people report, I feel like I'm in a fog. I don't feel like I can think real clearly. All right? So as you get older, those effects kind of don't wear off quite as quickly as when people are younger. So those are kind of human considerations to think about. Environmental considerations. What in this room today could affect how well you remember something?
Noises.
Noises.
Temperature.
Temperature.
Allergies.
Allergies, if something's going on, or outside, or mold, or whatever. Too much rain.
If you're distracted or have a lot on your mind,
Yes, if you're distracted, or somebody turned the fan off because the hum was a little loud. So somebody turned it down so we could hear better, right? If there's a strong odor, if somebody was baking cookies in that kitchen, we'd all be like, oh, I'm so hungry, it's time for lunch, right? Or if they were cooking sauerkraut and you don't like that smell, you're like, oh, oh. Okay? So smells can get in the way. Smells, temperature, environmental distractions, all those things can have an effect. Noise is a funny one. Who here, when you're at home, likes to have the radio on or the TV on just for a little bit of noise? All right? Who here thinks better when it's nice and silent? Okay? So just in your environment, and it's what people enjoy or what they like. I like noise. I go home, I turn on the TV, I turn on the radio. I like a little noise. If I'm trying to, when I was a student, I had a radio on or TV on in the background. My mom hated that when I was in high school. She's like, turn that off, you can't study well. But she's a quiet person. So she was thinking that what works best for her would work best for me. People are different. So again, there can be too much noise, not enough noise. In houses, if you like little knickknacks and stuff, those bring you peace, you like those things, that's fine. For somebody who doesn't like clutter or lots of little things, they might be overwhelmed. There's just too many things in this house. So again, environments can really play a part on how well you remember things, how your brain's functioning. So this is what we call the abnormal signs of aging with your brain, okay? Signs of dementia. So I'm just going to do a quick little snapshot on this because this isn't the focus of our program today, but I do want to kind of explain the differences. So when you hear the word dementia, it's a generic term like the word car, okay? So when sometimes people use the word Alzheimer's and dementia, Alzheimer's is a specific type of dementia. Just like you might drive a Chevy, or you might drive a Ford, or you might drive a Toyota. There are specific types of cars. There are specific types of dementia. The one we hear about the most is Alzheimer's. It's the most common, okay? So that is a specific type of dementia. Dementia is the generic term, like car is a generic term. How many times do we say, oh, I'm going to run out to my car? You might drive a truck, you might drive an SUV, you might drive a car. It's a generic term. We don't really get specific, all right? But here's what people find in general. People will have these kind of symptoms when they are progressing with a form of dementia, all right? Memory loss that affects your daily life, all right? So I can forget somebody's name and still get through the day. I can forget what I had for dinner last night and I can still get through my day. All right? That wasn't important to me. I ate, I'm good, all right. All right? However, if I eat my lunch today and in 20 minutes, in an hour, I'm like, I didn't have lunch. That's an issue, okay? I might not remember what I ate for lunch because it wasn't important. I had lunch. But if you forget the entire experience, does that make sense? Does that kind of help a little bit? All right, poor concentration. All right, again, if you have poor concentration in general, that's not a good measure for you. But if you typically have good concentration, you can follow a list, get through it, do things, follow the directions on a recipe. It's when it starts affecting your daily life. Your concentration is affecting your daily life. I bend down to tie my shoe, and then I get distracted, and then I walk over here, and I think I'm going to go to the bathroom, and then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, look, a cookie or a donut, and it's to a degree of severity that it's affecting your life. Okay, it's not that I was going to go into this room and do something, and I forgot what I came into the room for, so I go do something else, and later on I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, I meant to go get the laundry out of the dryer. Okay? When you remember later, that's normal. All right? It's when you don't even know that you forgot anything that there's an issue. Difficulty performing familiar tasks, again, things that are to a different degree. Not that I'm not a very good sewer, and I'm still not a very good sewer. All right? That's not a good judgment. All right? But if I've always sewn, and I've always quilted, and I can crochet, and I can do all these beautiful things, and now it frustrates me, and I don't remember how, and I'm messing up, that could be, a sign. Language impairment. So if I held up this, what is this? A pen, right? Sometimes people with Alzheimer's will still be able to tell you that you write with it, but they can't recall the word pen. Okay? It's common things. Now, if I held up something really random that you don't use in your everyday life, and I said, what is this? And you're like, oh, and let's say I held up a phonograph, all right? Something that we don't use every day. You're like, ooh, I know what that is, I just can't think of the name, okay? A phonograph is not in your everyday life, okay? So it's things that are everyday that people have issues with, not something that's kind of out of your thought process, out of your memory at the time. Disorientation, this can be to the place, the time, people. So I might think it's 1952, and I really believe it's 1952. All right? Oftentimes people with Alzheimer's or a form of dementia are living in the past. All right? Oftentimes that's when they see their child, they call them their spouse's name. Because I still think you should be young and dark hair, and you don't have gray hair and wrinkles. That is not who you are. So that's oftentimes why people will call their children their significant other's name, because that's how they remember. That's where they're at in life. They're in their middle ages. They're not older. Poor judgment, doing things that are not safe anymore. Putting a hot pad on a hot, stove. Or when I worked for the Alzheimer's Association, we had families who would say, they would come over and the mom was cooking something, and the daughter was like, oh, what are you cooking? Because the mom was like, yeah, I'm making dinner. And she's like, oh, I'm making a roast. Can you all imagine what a roast smells like? Right? That sensory memory. We know what roasts smell like. And the daughter was like, it doesn't smell like a roast to me. So she went into the kitchen and opened up the oven, and the mom was cooking like a little teddy bear. All right? But her perception was not well. So it was dark brown, humped over, kind of the size of a small roast. Her perception wasn't there. Her ability to perceive what that really was is off. So things like that can start changing. Misplacing objects. Oftentimes this is putting the milk in the cupboard versus the refrigerator. Now you and I might go to the cupboard and open it up and think, what am I doing? And you put it appropriately away because we're distracted or thinking about something else. But they will put it in the cupboard and not think twice about it. Changes in mood, behavior, personality. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes people will start cussing and they never said a cuss word in their life. When I worked at the veterans home, children would be like, my dad never cussed a day in front of us. And now he's like, blah, 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 a line of curse words. Okay, that kind of ability to, that personal filter is not there anymore. The filter's not working. They will say things that socially are not acceptable anymore. Okay? The filter is not there anymore. And then sometimes people lack initiative. And oftentimes this is because it's harder to do it than not do it. So if I'm confused or I'm unsure, it's easier for me just to sing. So in the beginning, people start kind of pulling back from things they used to enjoy doing because it's harder for them. So they may know something's going on, and they know it frustrates them, so they start withdrawing from things they used to enjoy doing a lot of times. This might be hard for you guys to see, but I'm just going to go over it kind of quickly here. So when you think about what's normal, everybody can forget, all right, part of an experience. What did I eat for yesterday for lunch? I don't know. I'd have to think really hard about that, all right? But again, it's a whole different level when they forget the whole experience. Oftentimes, we can remember later, what was that name? What did I walk into that room for? We remember later. People with memory loss, they don't even know they forgot anything, so they're not even trying to remember it later. Following directions, written or spoken, typically we can. People with dementia, as they go through the progression of it, as it gets worse, it's going to be harder and harder for them. We can use reminders, you know. How many of us like to write ourselves a list? I mean, and if I forget my grocery list on my table at home, I'm sunk. I'll remember part of the list, but I'm not going to remember the whole list, right? But if I have my list, I can follow my list and I can do that. A lot of times in the beginning stages, people will start leaving notes for their loved one, like make sure to brush your teeth, make sure to turn off the stove, and they can read that and be like, oh yeah, stove's off, oh yeah, I need to brush my teeth. But as they progress, they're more likely not to be able to do that. And then again, we can care for ourselves, and people will progressively get worse, and they will need help to take care of themselves, to do, you know, normal bathing, dressing, and things like that. Any questions? And if you have questions after the program, feel free to come up to me and ask me later if you don't want to ask them out in front of everybody. Our minds, like our bodies, will fall into ill-conditioned states from excessive comfort. I want you to think about that for a minute, all right? Don't get so comfortable that you don't challenge yourselves anymore, all right? That's what happens sometimes. We just get so settled in life, we have our routine, we don't deviate, we don't challenge ourselves, and our brain is going to get lazy, all right? Your brain is like muscles. If you use them, they're going to stay more active, all right? If you don't use them, they're going to get lazy. They're going to get weak. They're not going to be as fast. They're not going to be as accurate, all right? Who here likes to do crossword puzzles? Who likes to watch Jeopardy? Who likes to play cards? Who likes to socialize, converse? All great things, all right? So we're going to start talking about what's good for our body just for a moment. All right? Eating well, making sure you get enough water, enough sleep. All right? Challenging yourself regularly. All right? If you like to always do crossword puzzles, great, but try harder crossword puzzles. Try a different kind of challenge like Sudoku. Try word finds sometimes, because diversifying is a really good way to keep your brains healthy. And we're going to talk about that in July, so hopefully if you find this interesting enough, you'll come back in July and we'll talk more about keeping your, it's called Fitwits, so keeping your brain fit. All right, now we're going to talk about how to do the everyday tips and techniques to get through everyday forgetfulness, okay, things that we all have issues with. The first is paying attention, all right? How many times have somebody told us something and we forget? It's because we were not paying attention. So in the moment, if somebody's giving you directions, really be focusing on the directions. Don't be thinking about all the things you need to go do later. Pay attention in the moment. When you walk into your house and you throw your keys down, don't just throw them somewhere and go start making dinner or make a phone call. When you put your keys down, pay attention to where you set them. Better yet, have a certain spot that you always put them. Then you know, okay? Oftentimes, people lose track of keys, sunglasses, cell phones, because we frankly are doing something else in our brains. We're thinking about the next thing we need to do, what needs to get done, the list of to-dos. We are not paying attention in the moment we set that item down. So then tomorrow morning when we want to leave our house and run errands or go to an appointment, We're like, where in the world is our, you fill in the blank. Where in the world are my shoes? Where in the world is my purse? Where in the world are my keys? You just weren't paying attention in that moment. Another thing that we're going to talk about is mnemonics. I'll explain that a little bit more. We're going to talk about how language can help us and kind of recall and recognition. So I kind of just did pay attention. But again, how many of you like to give directions with landmarks? I like landmarks, right? So you're like, once you hit the Walmart, once you hit the such and such church,
Yeah, that's easier than go east and
go
west
east and look for 2nd Street or whatever. Yeah. So exactly. So when somebody's giving you directions and you're ask them to give directions in how you function best. If you prefer east, west, north, south, ask for that. If you prefer landmarks, make sure they give that information too. Because again, everybody functions differently. So set it up for yourself to succeed. All right. So let's say we go to a local mall that has multiple entrances, okay? Not just one entrance in and out. How you're trying to remember people's names, you're trying to remember something you want to remember, try to make an association with something that you know. All right? Why do you think